Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm all right. Bit disappointing couple of games, but
Yeah,
like on a personal note, I'm fine.
that's good to hear. Yeah, look, the title of this episode is City Whitewashed, and it was two disappointing defeats against teams in white. And I've got to say, looking ahead, it doesn't get too much easier against the team in white we have on the weekend, but we'll get to them in due course. Yeah, look, I guess we'll start with that Preston game. Um, Bit of a very frustrating one after a victory against another team in white in Swansea. It's had us winning three in a row. To lose 1-0 at home, it was just a really disappointing outing.
Yeah, look, I think I while I was disappointed, but with the loss at against Preston, it was not so disappointing as the Derby game this morning, because look, even though I think we were outplayed by Preston for long periods, we still did have some really clear chances, which on another day probably go in, and that changes the course of the game. I think that Eves' header is the main one that comes to mind that
Mm,
somehow their keeper saved.
yeah,
Um, you know, and so I think there was still some you know difficulties with, I don't know, it's the whether it's the new like tactics and or the new like uh, details of the formation and the way Avaladze wants them to play. But some of that's still not quite, working, and they don't seem to be gelling. It seemed a lot, I guess, even over the two games, um, where players don't seem to really get either their roles or the roles of the people around them within this new style of play. Seems all of a sudden lots of players seem very isolated and very unsure of what's going on, which I think has
yeah,
contributed to a few things which we've seen, particularly this morning, was lots of this where we don't know what's going on, and so we start being more defensive and we start backing away and backing away and backing away to a point where, sorry for skipping ahead, but like we had
no,
five defenders around the ball, and then like
yeah,
Lawrence can sneak in and score. Where ideally, all of those guys should have been marking a player, not just like retreating like
yeah.
into this space where they all got in front of each other and in front of Ingram and in everyone's way, so much so that and nobody took control of that the striker like should never happen, something like that at any level, let alone at a professional level.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that whether you think that the players are maybe a bit uncertain about their roles in the side now. And I think, again, jumping ahead a bit more to this morning, with the number of personnel changes to the starting 11, you can't help but think that maybe there's a bit too much change too quickly for some players where we're not really sure on how we're lining up. And going back to the Derby game, I think you look at the goal in question. You've got Greaves sort of stepping up on the line. So he's playing the goal scorer on side, Archer on side. But then you've also got, obviously, it's a poor pass from Doherty that sort of sets up the play. But then you've got, I think it was Bernard who then wasn't tracking Archer back because he thinks he's playing the line, but Greaves isn't up in the line with them. Um, it could also be a coincidence in a way because we've had Baxter out for the last two games. Maybe it's a real show of the influence that Baxter has in the defense and speaking to his defenders. It could be a little bit of both. I'm not sure what's so you sort of talk there about player uncertainty. You think that's the key issue?
I think there's a few. Yeah, it's a bit of a multifaceted thing going on. My take on it is partly the personnel changes, like as you talked on, like, or touched on, lots of players coming in and going out, and makes it difficult to maintain those formations and understand like how different players play. Just personal opinion, if I was in that position and I was looking to change the squad, I'd be going, you got half an hour, you know, prove to me that you deserve a starting spot. I
Yeah,
get that he wants to see all the players in a game situation. Totally get that. I just don't think like it's one of those like, okay, yeah, we went 1-2, we went 3 on the bounce, and we're going good. Why you would then just like suddenly
Yeah.
make changes. I get, like, we've brought these players in and we want to see them, but it sort of feels a little like change for the sake of change, or change just to see players, when uh, you know realistically we still want to get points, like, because
Yeah.
you'd hate to get to a position where you know we start to pick up some points again, but it's becomes too late, or too long a run of poor form, because we're chopping and changing just so that we can see every player, and then it comes down to it and we end up, like, absolute worst case, but relegated again by a margin of 2 points or something, and you go, well, there was winnable games in there where, had we maintained the squad, maintained the form that they were building, that because I think arguably, like, sure, this, like, you even go further, the Swansea game, we're probably lucky. They had some really good chances to equalise or even go on and win. They probably created more than we did, but we managed to get a result. Keep that same squad completely, as much as you can. Obviously, I think Baxter was out with illness, so that's a forced change. But there were other. Were there other changes for Preston? I can't remember now.
I think for Preston, that might have been the only starting change. I think Bernard came off quite early because he got a
That's right.
knock. I think that was the only starting change, because I think that was it was actually a little bit surprising, because we thought maybe Force was going to come in for Eves, and it was actually really good that
Yeah.
Eves kept his place. So it was the Preston game was actually, of the two, a game where you look at it and you go, oh, okay, we are sticking with that winning team. And granted, we then lost that game, so maybe he's looked at that and thought, okay, well, I've given the starting team the chance, and I'll make the changes. But and again, we're so what I almost want to like sort of run through the Preston game, just clear it out, because what we're talking about is sort of both games. We're sort of jumping ahead. On the positives on the Preston game, though, I thought Fleming was really good again. I thought he's kind of come in out of nowhere. I know he's had a few big injuries, but he's sort of come in out of nowhere and really made that left back or left wing back spot his own. And so, I mean, and maybe I'll just do my MVP votes now, because then we can talk about both games as a collective with the Derby game. I gave Eves the 3 votes for this one. I think you sort of talked there about his headed chance in the first half, and again, he just looked really sharp up top. And I think almost emphasizing in this Derby game, when he's not playing, how isolated and how much Force struggled to get into the game. It shows, I think, the underrated work ethic that Eves has in the side. I gave Fleming the 2 votes. As I said, I think he was really good down that left wing again. And I gave Greaves the 1 vote. I thought this was a return to form for him after a bit of a struggle for a little while. I thought he had one of his better games of the season against Preston.
Yeah, look, to be honest, it would be pretty hard to you look. I might actually only flip Eves and Fleming. I think because of, like, how drastic, because Fleming came in, and how, like, drastic this like, especially after being on such a long layoff, and being out for so long, and to just we were like, oh, he's nearing fitness, we're going to have him available, and then, like, and then just thrown straight in, 90 minutes of really good performances, lots and lots of energy, and taking on players, and whipping in crosses, and, like, just everything. So I think I'm going to go 3 for Fleming against Preston, and then 2 for Eves and 1 for Greaves.
Yeah. So now, yeah, we'll bring in the Derby game now, so we're not jumping around as much. But yeah, following the Preston game, you kind of go, we got the loss, so maybe he thinks we can make those changes. But then, as I sort of just said, you got Force starting up top, who, apart from that cross in for KLP, didn't really offer that much. And you sort of think, if as you said, if he wants to sort of see the squad and make that judgment of who his best 11 is, my concern is I look at the fact that Doherty gave the ball away for the Preston goal, had a pretty poor game against Preston. Smallwood, I would say, was probably better against Preston on the balance of things, but it's Smallwood who comes out of the side, not Doherty. When I feel like Doherty and Walsh are more like for like than Smallwood and Walsh, where I think if Smallwood's coming out, I'd almost play Slater there, and Slater wasn't even in the squad. So unless he's got an injury of some sort, that sort of change just doesn't really make sense to me. And it was just a lot of the changes or selections for this morning's game just didn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I was when I was watching the only got to see the first half this morning, but in that first half, watching Force just run around, it kind of reminded me of like games where we've been critical of Eves for that, where he's running around lots but not doing anything.
Yeah.
And he was trying to be busy and he was trying to be involved this morning, Force, but it felt like he was just working for himself. Like there were moments where they played a goal kick from centre back on the left side to the goalkeeper, who then played it to the other centre back on the other side of the goal. And I don't know, I think it was Force and KLP, and one charged in without like the other one being ready, and it allowed them then to just super easily play out, where it only needs a signal or whatever, and they both go in together. They're under heaps of pressure, and then like it forces just a long ball or something silly. Like the couple of times that there was a couple of times we put Curtis Davies under a bit of pressure when he was on the edge of his box, and there's a couple of half mistakes and things. But my main observation about the game this morning was that we were not defending very well at all across the pitch. Like in addition to that, like not working together to defend in those key moments and try and pin them in their half or in the corner or whatever. The big thing was that like we were not blocking passing lanes at all. We would just like we would get to a position and we would stand and we would look at the like what Derby was doing, and then the ball would go past, and then we would just like turn and run or back off more, instead of being like, okay, well, they've only got an option there, like here and there, and like look around and then just go, well, all I have to do really is like take 3 or 4 steps to my right and I block that option, and then they're either going to try and bring it out to like make me react, or they're going to send it long. It just felt like, very reactive is probably the word, instead of like, trying to, they were letting Derby dictate the terms of the game instead of trying to force them into making decisions. So
that's right. And I think there are two elements to it. I think there's definitely a lot of blame for the players and the way they played, and I think I saw a few comments that this was a very McCann-esque sort of performance, and we've had these sorts of games under McCann, not so much this season, because I think this was our worst defeat of the season, I think, or at least it was looking like it at 3-0. But just in the sense that I think we do have quite a young team and a young squad, and I think that they will have games like this where they don't have that, they don't turn up with the right mentality, or they just don't gel or click or whatever you want to say. And I think obviously not helped by the lineup being so many changes. But I think there does have to be blame for Shotta, and I was going to play a clip, but I think it'll be too difficult to do it, where he was talking to Burnsy after the game and basically got asked, you could see what the issues were at halftime. I was a bit surprised you didn't make any changes at halftime. And Avaladz's response was, oh, well, I can't take one player off, being Fleming, because he was getting attacked down outside, when we've got 2, 3, 4 other players also having issues. Better to just leave it and try and work into the game. And the response was sort of, well, I'm not really saying take Fleming off, but we can see that he needs more protection. We need more protection on that side of the field. Why, we had Honeyman playing up on right wing or in a more attacking position than usual, depending on if you believe that the formation was 3-4-3 or whatever. Why not just put another body in that midfield? Why not bring Smallwood on? Why not, bring Longman on at right wing or Elia on at right wing and push Honeyman back into midfield? It concerns me that, and I don't want to be too reactionary, and I'm sure I am to an extent being quite reactionary, but I've sort of felt this before he was appointed, but it just feels like another Slutsky appointment, where it's a manager coming in who doesn't really have a good appreciation or understanding of the championship, where when we were 3-0 down, it felt like a game under Slutsky, where you just felt like the defense was at sea. We had no ability to just shut up shop. The manager was just sitting on the bench, not saying anything. He just looked shell-shocked in that first half, and especially at 3-0, but in that first half. So he just looked shell-shocked on the bench. And I just kind of think he must be sitting there thinking, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This, it's much more difficult than I thought this job was going to be. So, it's, you know, not the easiest of games to try and back up from against Fulham coming up this weekend, but we've got to see some sort of response.
Yeah, look, I think obviously part of that for us or anybody, or even Shotta following the team throughout the first half of the season, if it is to be believed that that was the case, because there was rumors flying around that Ajun had already made contact,
Yeah.
early on in the proceedings, that he was going to appoint him and all that. You know, you just fall into that armchair critic, and it's so easy for us or for someone from afar to sit and say, and I don't really want to go back and talk too much about like the McCann thing, because it, as much as I, have opinions on that appointment and that decision, it's gone now, and there's not really any
Yeah.
point. But I think like it's easy for us or anyone to have sat and said, McCann's doing a terrible job, and like, oh, with that squad, I could do this
Yeah.
or whatever, and then to as you said, come into this league, which is notoriously the most difficult league to work in and to get out of, essentially, especially, or to get out of in a positive way. It's probably not that difficult to fall out of it at the bottom end, as we
As we
saw a
found,
couple of
yeah, yeah.
seasons ago. But to get promoted out of is one of the toughest leagues. I think that there is a sense of naivety in the way that Arveladze is going about his business at this stage. Well, that is the sense that I get. The the telling factor will be over the next couple of games whether he's going to learn, like, from, I mean, what we are perceiving as mistakes, what the journos there are perceiving as mistakes. Surely he needs to at least be open enough to admit that he has made managerial mistakes within these games in regards to substitutions, tactics, setup, starting 11s, whatever.
Yeah.
Something, we're not winning, so something's gone wrong. If he at least can, take the moment to sit back, look, find, a solution, then I'll be okay with a couple of shitty results.
Yeah.
But I also don't want that to be like, oh well, they played badly, so my solution is new first 11 tomorrow, like on the weekend, right? That doesn't really fix the problem. Just throwing new players in for no reason. Okay, I think you mentioned it before with Doherty having a poor game against Preston and then maintaining his place over Smallwood, who is, while not a flashy player, it, it's been pretty hard to pick out games where he's been particularly poor. And he
Yeah, that's
does,
right.
yeah, right. He has, and he has that very important job in our squad, which he actually, like, in our team, which he does actually do quite well, despite like my own personal reservations about whether he would be suitable at this level and whether he could really cut it. But in terms of protecting the defense and getting across to help and cover in some of those areas, he does that really, really well. And I think when he's in there and he's leading by example, that we seem to go better.
And probably the only player that we have that would do that role better or as well as him is Slater, and he wasn't even in the squad.
Mm,
So I hope, well, not that I hope that he was injured or sick, but I hope there was
mm.
a reason that he wasn't in the squad and it wasn't just a case of being left out because the poor kid's just signed here from Sheffield United because he wasn't getting chances there. I'd hate to think he's not going to get chances here either.
Yeah, look, that would be particularly disappointing. And I think certainly, I think we saw, like, this morning, Walsh was, I was
Yeah.
not
Would
impressed.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
um,
Because I was going to ask what your opinion on Walsh. I don't want to be too reactionary off one game for him, but I didn't
mm.
understand the signing at the time, and I have seen nothing to sway that opinion so far.
And I think this is again where I said earlier that I think like what would have been better to blood these guys into the team is those like 15, 20 minutes, half hour stint at the end of a game to see, how they fit within the team, whether they can do the role that you want them to, instead of just like throwing them in and hoping for the best in a team that, what are we on the, so we're the ninth here in Australia, so that Walsh has been training with the team for 1 week,
Yeah.
essentially. he just they don't he doesn't know them. He doesn't know how anyone plays. Right? Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense when you have like even Slater. While yes, he hasn't been here this year, played with most of these guys all last season.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
like
So you think
I
like if
think that
Smallwood, if Smallwood or someone was injured, then I go, yeah, okay, we will throw Walsh in because we're sort of forced to. But doing it by choice, you're right. Like in this sort of game, was a bit surprising.
yeah, I just think there's some context around like individual players and where they fit within the team and whether they have like Slater has the history of
Yeah,
last season like in his favor in theory, and it's weird that when that we that wasn't taken advantage of. I yeah, look, I was not impressed with Walsh. I think Doherty is now in a little form slump. He has not really hit the heights that he did last season this year at all, but it's a step up in division, a step up in quality, a step up in opponents for the most part. He still, I think, for most of the season has been doing an acceptable job, yeah, without being as productive or however you want to define it as last season. I think for the most part he's been okay. The last few games, not so much. I think he's been pretty poor. And as much as you don't want to then like punish a player for a single mistake, the pass at Preston was so fucking
yeah,
shit. I
yeah.
don't even know like what he was trying or who it was for. Like
It
it
was
was a
just such
weird
like a
little
chipped up little ball. Yeah,
yeah, and it like uh, just smash it if there's no option there like in that and that's just a danger zone that you don't
yeah,
give away the ball there. If you don't have a clear pass, then I'd absolutely just say hoof it upfield, push up, reset, and like just try and trap him there. But anyway, now we're going back and forth
yeah,
again. But I
yeah.
think
No,
like
that's all good.
I just think personally, I think Doherty probably does need a break, but I don't think that like yeah. Now I guess going into the next game, we now have a situation where the two starting midfielders from to this morning's game were poor, and so
Yeah,
we are essentially now forced to make more changes.
that's I was going to say because you look at the Derby game, we made 4 changes. I think I count. So Walsh started for Smallwood, Force up top instead of Eves, Coyle instead of Longman, and Jones instead of Bernard. And only that latter one was enforced. And I thought Jones was fine. I don't think he did anything amazing, but he also wasn't. I wouldn't have said largely at fault for much of it.
Hmm.
I question whether Coyle was ready to go. I wonder if he was sort of thrown in because he was sort of he's a natural right back, so let's just get him in the side. And I thought he was probably out of position a bit for the first goal, which he has been at times this season. He was out muscled for the header. He's sort of earlier in the season had issues with his positioning at this level as well. I wonder if that was a change that needed to be made. Was Longman? I think Longman was on the bench, so I
Yeah.
would have just kept Longman. And it comes back to your point of making all of these changes for the sake of it, and bringing Coyle in isn't even bringing a new player in. It's a player that we've
Hmm.
seen, and if Shotter's been watching all our games this season, he's already seen Coyle at this level. He doesn't need to throw him in per se. But yeah, you're right. Like, now looking at this next game, we're going to fall into this trap again where we're now saying, well, we've lost 3-1. We've got to make all these changes and rip up the team sheet. And we'll just fall into the same trap. And maybe in a way, it being Fulham is almost fortuitous, where it's basically a case of a no-lose situation where we think we're going to lose 5-0. Let's just reset. Let's draw a blank slate. Let's say, what do we want our first 11 to look like? Play it. If we lose, we lose. It's Fulham. It's sort of expected. If we get anything better than that, it's just a positive.
Hmm. Um. Yeah. Look, I mean that's a fair point. I think like in terms of looking at the games ahead, how we're going to go about this. I think
Because I think because you just say like Shotter's trying to find what his best 11 is, and I think, well,
hmm.
we did just win 3 games in a row. He should have a reasonable idea of what works.
Yeah.
Don't think we needed to rip up too much.
Yeah. Look, the only thing I was going to say was, and uh, it's not necessarily the best way to go about it, but and some may see it as embarrassing for those players, but we have the under 23s team
Yeah,
or the under 20s or whatever number it is. where like there's no reason that you couldn't say like Walsh, I want you to go play an hour for the under 23s, and then you'll get a half hour for the in the scene like in the men's like
Mm.
the full squad or whatever, right? You get to see them, then you get to see them start a game. Sure, like the quality level's different, and obviously it's like against younger kids and all that, but like if it's just about like seeing what they can do in a game, like someone who's been playing in the championship should, in theory, go into the under 23s and be freaking dominant.
Yeah.
Like there's
And I'm
not
pretty
like
was it
yeah,
start of
sorry.
this season or was it last season where I'm sure we've had a few under 23s games where we've had quite strong sides because
Yeah.
we've had like McLaughlin and other players like that in that under 23s side. I think Longman played in an under 23s game at the start of this season from
Mm.
memory.
Yeah,
And
look,
like
and I think
Williams and stuff. Yeah.
look, plenty I mean, I don't it could maybe I just haven't paid attention to the under 23s team sheets or whatever. Maybe they're like but but I feel like there's an option there within the club, within the squad, that would maybe be a better way to see how some of these guys go from the off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've
No,
seen
definitely.
plenty of like particularly with some of those guys that we've mentioned, and it's not just them in previous years as well. We've gone, oh, they're coming back from injury or whatever. They're going to go play the under 23s for a few games. This should be good, and then they put in really underwhelming performances, and you go, okay, well they're not ready to come back in yet.
Yeah, and
Like
that's why I wonder what has Coyle I don't think Coyle like you said I haven't really paid attention to the team sheets, but I would assume that Coyle hasn't played any games with the under 23s. Why wasn't he eased back in after a long term? Same with Alfie Jones. Were they eased back in through the under 23s? I know that I mean maybe that's more my footy sort of mind of like, Aussie rules down here. You quite often will get first team players dropped and playing in the reserves team and the young, basically the youth team. But why isn't that a path back from injury? I just question them just being thrown in straight away. I mean, for someone like Elia, I can sort of say, yeah, reasonable caliber player. Force as well, been playing Premier League football for Brentford this season. Okay, yeah. But Walsh only played 5 games for Swansea this season. And I don't think that's all starts either. I think that's 5 appearances in total. And only 3 or 4 for Bristol City before that. So it's not as if he's some 40 game a season veteran at Swansea who we're just saying we're picking up a championship caliber player. This is a guy that's not playing all that much for a team pretty close to us in the table.
Yeah, so I think there's just some weird decisions, or I mean, from the outside, like from the outside, there seem to be some weird decisions that are being made in regards to the squad, its rotation, 11 selections, however you want to define it. But I think, honestly, if we can go back to, the team that won against Swansea, then we just should, because like they won.
Yeah, I
And like
mean,
they're all now fit. I was wondering about, like, with Coyle coming in and Fleming coming in, about whether there is in the cards shortly a switch to a back four, and whether
yeah, I
that
think
was the thing that it was about, like seeing, letting Coyle play, going, okay, we got it right
yeah,
back. Yep, had some game time. I've now, over the past couple of games, through circumstance, happenstance, being able to see all of my available centre backs play as well. So now, do I go, okay, well, I've got Fleming, I've got Coyle, which of the remaining 4 essentially are the best 2 centres? Is that something that's in the cards for later? And I guess maybe if he wants to move towards that, which there was talk.
I think his preferred formation's
I don't know.
4-3-3. I think Burnsy said that
Yeah.
he answered today that his preferred formation's 4-3-3. So that could well be it.
So and I guess, like, if that's the case, and I get, it's just one of those things where, like, saying we've watched like 2 games in the last 5 days, and where we don't have we don't know what the grand plan is, but I can sort of maybe understand some of the choices a little bit if we're going to go to a 4-3-3, and you go, well, I want to see, I want a right back and I want a left back, and I want to see how they go, and you know that makes a little bit of sense if that's a plan moving forward. But I guess, like, if nothing changed and we keep playing in this 3-4 3-5-3-2 weird thing that's going on, then
yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
almost like a
really like.
three. It's almost like a 3-2-1-4. If that counts up to the right number. Yeah, 3-2-1-4. Because we're almost playing like Walsh and Doherty in the midfield, Honeyman slightly advanced of them, but then like KLP, Fleming. Well, I guess I don't know, because you've got Fleming who sort of sits further deep, but then you've got like I don't know how it's sort of
it's
a bit
weird. But it, like
I mean, we sort of end up at a 3-2-1-4 when we've thrown all our forwards on, but yeah.
That like, and if there's a part of me that goes, that's the formation essentially that he's inherited, and he's trying not to obviously rip it all up and start again on day one. And I feel like, now I'm going against like everything that I was criticizing for at the beginning of the podcast, but like maybe there's a process, and if he's working towards something, then I guess that's okay. I just don't. I still don't like the rafts of changes when, because a 1-0 loss is not terrible. Sure, it was disappointing, but a 1-0 loss is not terrible. And I guess, to be fair though, a 3-1 loss, even though we didn't score any goals, was disappointing. But like, if Derby didn't have the, what was it, 21 or 28 point deduction or whatever the hell, they're probably, I think they're above us on the table anyway.
They are, yeah. So I was going to qualify it as, we can look at Derby and say, it's the team in 23rd beating us, but really they're the team in like 16th or something that just happened to be 23rd because of the points deduction. Like the amount of games that they've won this season, and they've beaten Bournemouth, they've beaten West Brom.
I think they're equal with us on wins, but they've got like 9 more draws.
A lot more draws,
or something.
Yeah.
We're like 5 and they're 12 or something.
I do wonder if it is a bit of disrespect to Derby that, as you say, I suspect what he's done is said, this is a team that we, in all likelihood, should be beating. I'm going to use this as I can't imagine him doing this if it was Fulham in midweek and Derby on the weekend. I can't imagine him saying, I'm going to throw Coyle back in and give Force a first start and get Walsh in midfield. If it was Fulham, I feel like he would be saying, I know that the side that beat Bournemouth works. I'm going to play that side against Fulham. But because it was Derby, I think he was saying, I can have a look at all my players, see how they go, and quite likely pick up 3 points at the same time, which it didn't end up working out to. I did want to talk some positives, some positives out of the game, and good glimpses that we got from players. I thought Force in the first half, that cross that he put in for KLP looked really good. It was a very brief moment, but I think there is promise with Force. I do wonder if he needs a partner, and whether that's Eves or Elia or someone to play off him. I feel like he gets very isolated up top on his own. But I thought that moment was good, and I thought he did sort of keep working through the game, even if he didn't get the service. I thought KLP with that volley in the first half, we all sort of reacted in the same way. I thought that was a really impressive effort from him. Otherwise, I don't know, not too many. I mean, Fleming for the own goal. I thought it was. I saw the comment the other day, and I hadn't actually thought of the comparison until then. But someone said he's our most like Andy Robertson left back we've had since Andy Robertson left. And I was like, yeah, actually, he really is. The way that he takes on the opposition and gets forward, and the way, because you said you've seen the goal where he just sort of weaves his way through a few players and gets the ball into the box. But I don't know what it is. He just seems to get past players. It's not even like it's easily, but he just sort of like taps the ball past them and just sort of like weaves his way through. It's quite awesome to watch. But I thought that was probably my other standout moment of the match, if we're talking the few positives that there were.
I think what was interesting about the Fleming's assist for an own goal was that, like, because what was that? The guy that's Derby's third goal scorer, whose name I've forgotten.
Oh yeah. Bear with me, I'll look up.
Sire or something. I don't know. But anyway, so he absolutely. Pardon?
Who I didn't realize is Ebiselli.
Yeah, that's the one.
Ebiselli, so he's Irish. I was like, that's very surprising, but I don't know. Like, it's very foreign name.
Absolutely skinned Fleming, I think, in that second goal. Got past him, got around him, and then was able to get the ball in. Then, like, in the whatever it was, I guess it's second half, so 75th minute or whatever it was, Fleming just did him 3 times over
Yeah.
to get that ball in. So, while poor defense or poor defense in that first thing or whatever was, then at the other end was able to do something quite special. And I think you're right. Fleming he's come in and just is not afraid, which is like nice. He doesn't ever if he gets up there, he just goes, I'm here, I'm going to do something, and he just has a crack at it, which is really what you want in that part of the pitch. And he works hard to get back most of the time. Obviously, a couple of instances where it didn't quite, but I think
He's
he has
young.
been really
He's learning.
impressive.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I was thinking as well, this morning must have almost been a record at championship level to have Greaves, Fleming, Coyle, and KLP all starting as 4 Hull-born players. It would have to be just about a record because Greaves didn't play and Coyle obviously didn't play championship last time around. And I don't think Fleming was in the side earlier in the season at all. So that was kind of a cool thing as well. But how
it is.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it is always good just to see the locals or like academy products or both. If they happen to fit both titles, like coming through and breaking in the first 11 and doing well.
Yeah, and it's sort of reassuring that Shotter's still kind of giving them all a go, and it's not. I think as some feared with all the talk about the foreign players coming in, it hasn't actually ended up being too wild. We got all those transfer rumors in January about potential foreign signings, and I suspect some might have been a bit worried that it could force local players out of the side, but it hasn't at this stage, so that's good to see. Yeah, I thought we'd do the MVP votes and then we can just sort of move on to talk about the games we've got coming up. How about you kick us off with your 3, 2, 1?
Look, this is really difficult because, as I said, I only have seen the first half.
Even if you'd seen the second half as well, I think it'd be just as difficult. I really struggled with this one.
And and only based on comments that I've seen, I wanted to I feel like Eves came on and did something, and I would get, but I can't make a judgment because I didn't see any of that of what he did, and of what was left. I couldn't give any points to Walsh. I just no. I wasn't really that impressed. I mean, apart from the one cross that you talked about with Force, I'll give 3 to Fleming, but I don't think he actually deserves 3.
It's such a tough one, right? Because that was
I'll give 2 to KLP for the volley and a couple of nice interactions in the first half, and I don't know. McLaughlin, just I don't know.
I was going to say McLaughlin's probably the other one to name there. Look, yeah, I've gone reasonably similar to you, and at the same time, I'm looking at my 3, and I'm like, do any of them actually deserve votes? I don't think so, but in any other week, none of them would be close to it. But yeah, KLP, the 3, just literally for his first half display, his volley, probably had our best chances of the match besides the chance that Fleming created. But really, it was a pretty poor game from Lewis Potter's standards as well, I've got to say. Fleming, I gave the 2 votes to, as we said, sort of created that goal. But as you say, I mean, I feel sort of strange giving him votes because at the same time, I thought it was probably his poorest game for us, just with his positioning for, I think it was the second goal and the third goal. Third goal, he was basically waiting for us to take the ball upfield, standing in essentially the center circle, and Doherty's the one chasing back to sort of stop the attack, which wasn't great to see. And then Eves for the 1, because Eves came on and Eves was like, this is what a center forward needs to be doing, because Force was just not getting involved at all. And Eves was dropping deep. Eves was linking up the play, getting some touches and doing something. So I thought, good on you. I'll give you the 1 vote. But it's one of those games. It's like those first few months of the season, but I can't even give a vote to Ingram because I didn't think he was particularly good with a lot of his a lot of his efforts. Early in the season, we were just giving the votes away like candy to Ingram because he was just about the only one standing out. But yeah, it's one of those tough games to pick votes out for. Well, let's move on to the triple flashback feature of the week. And I had originally a different question, but it did occur to me that we did fortuitously have 3 goal scorers in this particular game. The game in question did come against Derby, but it was in happier times. It was the first leg of the playoff semi-final, which we played against them to get into the playoff final. And we did win that one 3-0. And so I want to see if you can name for me the 3 goal scorers in that game. And one of them is sort of a trick answer. So I'll take two answers for that one.
Can I hear the original question?
The original question was going to be, would you prefer the original question?
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't think I'm going to... I think I've got no idea on probably any of it. So I don't even know if the players that are in my mind are of the right vintage.
You're wearing the shirt appropriate for the question, I've got to say, because it's the shirt from that season.
Yeah. I hope it's got the right name on the back too. So I might go with that name.
I was going to say, what's the name on the back of the shirt?
It's got Hernandez on the back of the shirt.
There you go. There's one of the 3. Correct.
Okay.
Got the opening goal, yeah. One of the other players is a player that we have talked about previously on this episode, if that helps. Sealed the game with the final goal.
Davies?
No.
Maybe there's a weird own goal or something that I don't know. When did
there was an own goal? So that was the second goal. The third goal was from the Brandon Fleming-esque player, Andy Robertson. Yeah, right. Yeah. So Robertson got the third on the break right at the end of the game, which, considering we lost the second leg 2-0, actually ended up being the goal to get us to Wembley. But I think I saw the stat when I turned on KO this morning that we'd lost 7 of our last 9 against them, and I think one of the 2 wins would have been this one because it was that long ago, but a bit depressing. But yes, happier times when we got the win against them. Yeah, Hernandez with that first goal. The second goal was I think Odebajo picked up the ball, sort of got into the box, shot, and it bounced off 2 Derby players and then in off the post or something like that. And at the time I was like, oh, so good that Odebajo scored. And they're like, no, it's an own goal. So I was like, oh, it's a bit rough. But yeah, happier times. Probably not happier times is to come this Saturday. We do play Fulham. The return of Marco Silva to the MKM. Actually, is it the MKM? It might be Craven Cottage. I can't remember if we played them at home last time. We lost 2-0 in the other game. They're in pretty intense form. I think they've won 4 of their last 5. They drew with Blackpool, but they have scored 19 goals in their last 5 games, just casually. And Mitrovic does have 31 goals for the season, which I think I saw the stat that there's only 2 players before him that have hit 30 goals for the season in the championship. And he's done it with 17 games to spare. So I think he's on for a probably 45 to 50 goal season at this rate, which is pretty wild. We've sort of already talked about it, but what changes would you make for this side? Or I guess probably the more important question is how you're almost starting with a blank slate, but how would you line up this side rather than thinking about it as who would you take out? What would the 11 be?
Hopefully by this weekend, Baxter is recovered from whatever illness he has. And I would, based on recent form, I would start with Baxter in goal if possible. I don't think Ingram's been particularly impressive over the last couple. I'm happy for Fleming to start at left wing back, whatever that is. I would probably go with... I'm just almost naming the lineup from the last time we won, but the Greaves, McLaughlin, Bernard as the 3 centres. Not that Alfie Jones has been poor. I just think I
Yeah,
don't
because
know.
I was going to ask, because we were
Just
sort of talking, if we did switch to four at the back, which two centre backs that you'd,
mm,
because I guess there's the fear that if we switch to a four at the back, that McLaughlin would drop out, and he's probably been our best centre back for the season. But just because Greaves and probably Jones feels like a centre back pair, but if we did switch to a four at the back, which two would you pick?
probably McLaughlin and Greaves.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
they.
probably same.
I think Bernard, as much as I like him at this stage, he's a bit loose with his passes too frequently, and I think he's a little bit more dynamic than Jones, which is why in a three I would choose him over Jones. But I think he sometimes is a little bit loosey goosey with some of his distribution, where I feel like McLaughlin and Greaves for 90% of the time are actually pretty good at finding their target, finding a man.
Fair
I'd
enough.
bring uh, Longman in if it was yeah. So I'm going off the presumption that it's that weird mongoloid 5-3-2-4 whatever
Yeah,
the thing we've been doing with Longman at right wing back. I midfield three of I mean that probably be Slater, Smallwood, and Honeyman as my three. I think Walsh didn't show Jack, and I think Doherty's out of form at the moment, and I think he just needs a break, needs a kick in the bum, something.
and we probably need the second holding mid against Fulham anyway, because I think, Honeyman. Well, you only really need Honeyman as the attacking outlet when you've got, Wilson and Mitrovic and Cavallio, and their team just scares me. Anyway, yeah,
So,
that midfield three.
anyways, I'm running out of players to go.
So you got 5-3, and then you got two up top.
Yeah, I do, and I'm not sure how I want to go with this, because I do really want to see Alayaha get some more game time, but I think I would probably just have to go as a starting point with KLP and Eves up top. I think Eves is doing enough when he's on the field lately to warrant a starting position, and I think KLP, even though he's having some ups and downs lately, but again, he's like 20 and he's just been through probably it'd be his first like real
Season,
managerial change as well.
Oh, that as well. Yeah.
And that's a big like thing for a lot of players. That ownership change, managerial changes is a big thing for a lot of players. Let alone a young kid who's essentially only ever played top flight football under under one manager. So
And he's also
that
gone
would be
through
my
the transfer saga where he was sort of wanting to leave. He had the bid come in, we rejected it, so he's sort of probably a bit unsettled by that as well.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, those things are always like hard to. And I mean, look, I don't think it was the right time for him to go, but I also don't blame him for like if interest came in from the Premier League, who wouldn't be like, yeah, I'll have a go at that.
Yeah,
like
especially
that's
from
where
like
they want.
Brentford or
That's where they
someone.
want to
Yeah,
be. So yeah, and anyway, but then I guess like even like the last little bit, the I would absolutely, you'd have to have Sedamanesh, Fours on the bench. Don't give probably Huddleston Jones, and then I don't know, throw a blanket over who's left. I don't really. They're the ones that I'd
probably
want on the
Walsh.
bench.
Yeah.
Nah,
Because
suck
I think
eggs.
I think for me the only I agree with that first 11. I think that's probably the way to go. But I also agree with you that it's tough because you want to see Elia get more chances. I think the only way I could see that happening is if we did switch to a 4-3-3, which would probably mean Bernard/Jones not being in the 11, having Coyle at right back instead of Longman. And then it means you're basically picking between Longman and Elia to start on that right wing. I'd probably go with Elia over Longman, which feels really harsh, but I think Longman's a really versatile option to then throw on if you want to freshen things up on either side, really. Because then it feels so much more natural, especially in that 4-3-3. It feels so much more natural if we want to make a change. You've got Force for Eves, you've got Longman for Elia, and then you've got I don't really want to bring Walsh on at all, do I? But you've got Doherty to come on for like a Honeyman or someone like that. So you've got options on the bench all of a sudden that have very natural fits on the field to come on for, rather than this morning when we had Eves coming on for Coyle, I think it was, and then Lewis Potter's going from left wing to right wing back sort of position. It's just not helping things at all. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting 11. I think a lot of it rests on whether Baxter is back from his injury or illness or whatever it ends up being. If it's COVID, I think he's probably out till next week, which would be really unfortunate. But we sort of touched on at the start of the episode it's hard to, I'm trying to think. It's similar to at the start of the season when we were sort of complaining about McCann and the way we were playing, but Honeyman was still injured. And we thought, well, is it McCann not coping at championship level, or is it Honeyman's injury that means that we don't have our best team out? And I almost feel the same now, where I've been quite critical of Shotter, and there's definitely things that he could have done better this morning, but you have to think, is it Shotter and his tactics, or is it the fact we have our best goalkeeper missing? And our best form this season has come with Baxter in goal. So I think we've already seen the evidence that, clean sheets and better performances do come with Baxter in that goal. So that will certainly be interesting. How do you see the game going overall? Do you see any hope for anything, or is it just about minimizing the damage?
Look, I think Mitrovic will get to 32 at least. Although I think did we stop him from scoring last time out?
Yeah.
I
can't remember who scored
like
the goals for them. Yeah. I'll have a
but
look.
I feel like he was already like at some ridiculous level when we played them. Like he was already at 10 goals or something. We were like half a dozen games in, and we're like far out. And then we kept him to no goals. But
it was that weird period because we lost to Derby in probably our worst performance of the season at that point, anyway. And then we lost to Fulham 2-0, which felt kind of okay. And then we drew with Bournemouth, who were like undefeated and top of the table. And it was like, are we bad or are we doing okay? Yeah. Oh, no. Mitrovic did score in that one. He scored early, and then so he scored on 22, and then Carvalho scored on 34, and then they just went, oh, that's enough. And they stopped trying.
Yeah, right. Look, it's weird. Like, it's one of those ones where if you'd asked me like a week ago, I'd be like, yeah, we just knocked off Bournemouth, and we knocked off Swansea. Yeah, I could see us like maybe getting a draw. But like now, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being super negative and super reactionary. Term of the day.
It's hard not to be. It's it's football.
I just don't see it. I look. I don't think it's going to be like a 8-0 Wigan like thrashing. I don't think it's going to be.
You say that now.
Like, absolute. Yeah, I've probably cursed us into that.
Well, you're not Mike.
I don't get the
feel.
I don't get the feeling really it's going to be this calamitous game and calamitous result, but I also don't see us picking up points in it.
Yeah, fair enough then. We've also got Sheffield United next Wednesday morning to make it a pretty tough week, or tough 2 weeks really, after the week we've just had. They've won 3 of their last 5, which was the last 3 games that they've played, and they did beat us 3-1 last time we played, with some pretty poor set-piece marking for a couple of Egan goals in that game. I think I remember Wilkes was the one marking him, which seemed a bit strange at the time. Probably not much point talking about changes for that game from the Fulham game. We won't really know until after the Fulham game. But they're a side who, I mean, yes, they're in reasonable form. They're not doing too badly, but they aren't that far ahead of us on the table. I think fair enough, actually, they're 10 points ahead of us now. They weren't too much further away from us a couple of games ago. But it's a game unlike the Fulham game. I feel like it's still a game that we'll probably lose, which again probably feels a bit reactionary, but it's a much more winnable game. And it's the sort of game, I think, as we were talking earlier about what will be the yardstick for Shotter in terms of how do we judge him learning and developing and adapting from these losses. Fulham game, I think we can almost just have as a free pass. If we do better in it, then that's fantastic. And we've got some earlier evidence. But I think this Sheffield United game's a better yardstick for how we're looking and how we're developing under Shotter, I think.
Yeah, look, it's certainly going to be. It gets that point now where you're going like, okay, we're 2 losses in a row. Fulham might make it
Mm,
3, and then you go, that's not great form. But once you start it's only one extra game, but then 4 starts to look real bad, and then 5 losses on the bounce, and it's it's a disaster. And it doesn't take long to stretch out to look really, really bad and be really bad, because you're obviously picking up no points. And there's we were real close to some of those teams that were just above us, and now they've all got a bit of a buffer again, and we're suddenly closer to the bottom, closer to those bottom 3 teams again, and all of that, unfortunately. So I think you're right. The United Sheffield game should be it is a more achievable or winnable game. I'd actually be, you're almost sort of as you said, Fulham as a free hit, and you almost just have an eye, and you're really just spending your time preparing for that game, where Fulham is
yeah,
essentially a warm-up match for that game, that you go, well, that's the game we have to win. Yeah, if something happens and we manage to fluke a result, we defend our lives depend on it, like we did against Bournemouth, and manage to stake out a 0-0 draw or something against Fulham, you go, that's sensational.
yeah,
But that game against Sheffield is almost I mean, we still got so much football to play. You don't want to say line in the sand moment, but if we don't start, again, or at least start picking up some points again, all of a sudden that bottom 3 is going to get real close, because it's only, is it still 12 points, which seems like a lot, but in what we got,
yeah.
17 games, something to go. It's not.
Keep in
It's
mind
not a
that
lot in the grand scheme.
that's 12 points, but with Peterborough having 3 games in hand. And look, I will say, I mean, Reading and Cardiff, well, probably more Reading than Cardiff, because Cardiff have won their last 2 games, but Reading have lost a lot of games and are looking like, if there is a team that's going to stay up, whether it's Derby or Peterborough, it'll be Reading that goes down in their place. So I think there's that element to it, but we don't want to be complacent and be relying on other teams. When you look at the games we've got coming up, you sort of say, if we do lose these next 2 games, so all of a sudden that's 4 losses in a row. It's QPR, Barnsley, and Peterborough as the next 3 after that. And, that QPR game is going to be tough as well. And so all of a sudden that's potentially 5 losses in a row, which isn't the form you want going into 2 games against teams in the relegation zone in Barnsley and Peterborough, where I sort of said to Mike last week that looking at the Derby, Peterborough, and Barnsley games, you sort of think, if you win all 3 of those, you're almost guaranteed to stay up, because that's all of a sudden 9 extra points, and you've taken 3 points off each of those relegation sides. Now, having lost to Derby, it puts extra pressure on those 2 games against Barnsley and Peterborough, where we probably need, I don't know, 10. How many points are we on now? We're on 32, and I think you probably usually need about 45 to 50 points to stay up. So call it 5 more wins. I'd say 5 more wins would take us to 47. So if you get 2 of those wins against Peterborough and Barnsley, it does make things a bit more comfortable. But yeah, you'd certainly want to not be dropping anything in those games.
Yeah, look, I think hopefully sooner rather than later, we're playing the mathematically safe game, where it's instead of it coming down to that the last handful of games, it's where it's 7 games out or something, and we've managed to create a 18-point buffer or something on the bottom 3, and you go, well, we only have to win this game, and then we can't be caught.
Yeah,
Hopefully that's the position we find ourselves in, and with a couple of wins, potentially coming up, if it's over the next 5 games, we get 2 or 3 wins. I mean, that'd actually be a pretty good return. I would probably even accept a little bit less if it was 2 wins and a draw or something. Wouldn't be terrible. But yeah, I think anyway, to the point, I think we should push Sheffield. I'd expect at least a point I'd expect a point probably.
Fair
Hopefully
enough.
more.
Yeah. Look, I think a point over these next 2 games, I'd snap your hand off for. I think Fulham and Sheffield United are going to be tough games. I would hope. I mean, the frustration to me is it suddenly feels like we have a decent squad. I look at Alaya, I look at Force, I look at Longman coming in on a permanent deal now. Slater is good depth for Smallwood, and I just feel like we do actually have a pretty decent squad now. like Shotter, I just don't know what our best 11 is, and that's probably the concern. And I think if in doubt, as you said, just go back to the side that beat Bournemouth, beat Blackburn, and beat Swansea, and just keep it simple. I think against Fulham, maybe you make the case that of that 11, you just swap Doherty for Slater, and you just go with that. I think especially against Sheffield United, you've got to play Slater. Like, I think if there's any game that he's going to get up for and really want to prove himself in, it's going to be that game. And so I think you've got to play him in that one. And we see what happens. But hopefully it's a week of 6 points. I mean, stranger things have happened. Fulham can't win every game, surely. So I guess we'll see what happens. But look, thank you for joining me, Dan. It's been a long one, but it's been a good one.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm always pretty much always available. Always happy to come on, talk about City, talk about the ups and downs of following this
wins or
dramatic
losses.
football club.
Yeah. And look, I've got to get Mike back on at some point. We've got to break this curse. He's been on before the 8-0 against Wigan, the 4-1 loss against Fleetwood, which was our first loss last season. And now he's been on ahead of the Preston and the Derby results. So I've got to get him back on at some point just to break that curse and get him on for a win.
Didn't I reverse curse this last time I was on? And I said we were going to get 2 losses, and we got. Did we get 2 wins or just one of those 2 games?
I think it was the Blackburn and Bournemouth games. So I think you said it was going to be 2-0.
I think it was, and I was like, "There's no way we're going to get wins out of these," and we managed to get both. So, well,
there you go. So
reverse curses for Fulham again.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No. Well, thanks for joining me. And look, everyone, thanks for tuning in for this episode. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel where we do release an episode every week, chatting City. Give the video a like, give us a comment on what you thought about the games this past week as well. We're on both YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts from. So very accessible as well. But look, until next time, come on City.